Welcome everyone back to Debating for America's Youth. Today we have another awesome guest joining us today. Today we have Conor Sherry, who is the 2019 NSDA National Champion in Humorous Interpretation. Welcome, Conor.
Hello, thank you. Happy to be here. The famous interviewee in the famous interview show.
Well, thank you. So my first question getting started is, for everyone who's new or anyone who's new to humorous interpretation watching this, what advice would you give them as starting off in humorous interpretation?
I think I'd say for novice competitors and in HI specifically, but this is kind of a speech in general for novice, is the first thing I'd say is, one, don't like shy away from good competition. I know it's so easy to like go to a tournament and start like looking at, oh, who's in what round, who's this kind of thing. But I think this is a special activity where you can learn so much from competing. Whereas like in a soccer game or something, you're normally more focused on like, you're not studying the other players as you're playing. Whereas like in speech, if you can get into those tough rounds and watch those tough rounds, you have about 50 to 60 minutes of pure learning opportunities. So I would say I wouldn't shy away from competitive tournaments and competitive people. I would actually seek that out. That's how you grow. That's how you achieve greatness and stuff. And then the other thing I would say is also like kind of embracing comment cards, because they're so important, especially when so many of us are creating our pieces from our point of view. So hearing from adults and stuff is very helpful. Not taking them all to heart, and also knowing that sometimes they can be a little with like things that they're saying, but also keeping in mind that, you know, where there's smoke, there's normally fire. So you might not take the whole comment card, but there's normally some truth to every note that you're given on a comment card, at least in my experience.
That makes sense. And I watched your humorous interpretation piece on YouTube, and I found it really funny, but also I was very moved by it. You had a very interesting style. I mean, not interesting, I don't even think it's unique, but like you had like a moving story behind your humorous interpretation piece. So how do you find that balance between like being humorous and making people laugh, but also having that really story-driven element to your piece?
Right. Well, I think first of all, ever since I was a freshman, like my pieces have always been very like familial, like it's all about like family, and like there's normally like a message that I really believe in, that I have, which is, again, I guess advice for novice is to kind of always do a piece that you believe in and believe in the characters. Like I felt like I had built a relationship with all these characters in my piece, and I felt for them while also being able to hopefully spread a positive message. But yeah, nationals HI has definitely shifted over my 4 years. Like there was for sure a shift of where it went from being very much so like comedy, and it was just like a laugh. But as my years progressed, it got to the point where there were HIs I saw that I was like, you know, gonna cry like at the end kind of thing. So there definitely has been a shift of like people kind of pushing a little bit more of a drama side or a little bit more of a PSA kind of side. But yeah, so I think just like finding something you believe in and then committing to it.
Mm-hmm. So obviously you won NSDA Nationals, but you also finaled the year before. So I guess my question is, when you're in those top rounds, what do you think makes someone like stand out, especially to a judge, and gets them to be in the top, you know, 1 or 2 for that judge's ranking?
Right. My junior year was a little bit precarious. I don't know if you know any of this, but I got like really sick. So I was actually like, I almost dropped multiple times. I went to the hospital in between my quarters and semis, like in an ambulance, the whole shebang. So that was kind of different for me. That was just like, don't throw up in the middle of the performance, don't pass out, right? My parents were like stressed that I was gonna hit the floor in the middle of my performance. So that was kind of just a don't give up, which I think is a good mentality. Like if you mess up, like people that just keep going. Well, it's a side note is that the judges don't know your piece. So if you keep going, if you make a mistake, like there's been times where I've popped into the wrong character and I'll just be like, and then like go to the next character and keep going. Like no one knows. They're just like, oh, he added a fast pop there for what? You know, so I think that's a little bit of a note, but I think in general for HI, it's all about details, especially in those like upper rounds. It's the, you know, holding your cigarette correctly and not just letting it fly off into the universe. It's the opening a door right. It's really is the details that separate, because at the top, everyone's great, right? So it's the details, and it's honestly, really, it's a matter of who cares the most, which goes straight back to the caring about your message. It really shows when people care and who wants it the most. So yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. And do you have this like fear of public speaking, or have you always just kind of embraced the public speaking side to your pieces?
I think like, absolutely. I mean, I'm nervous before I was nervous before every single round. And even now, like being an actor and stuff, I'm nervous before every audition and every scene and all that stuff. And I think the reason for that is that the second, like if you're not nervous, I think that's the second that you realize like you don't care anymore. So those nerves are always there, and that's a great thing. If you're not nervous, it means you don't care. So I was nervous all 4 years from start to finish in the prelim of the easiest tournament I've ever been to the semifinal before breaks at nationals kind of thing. So yeah, I think I've always been nervous, but I wouldn't necessarily say there's like a fear. I think like the fear can kind of be turned into an excitement. I'm always excited, but I'm definitely nervous. Definitely have the butterflies.
That makes a lot of sense. So in my own personal experiences, sometimes when I would get nervous, it would cause me to almost like stutter and mess up in my piece. Have you ever messed up in your piece? I know you talked about how you can kind of just roll with it, but is there like specifically a way that people who like maybe mess up in a way that's not popping into a character, but maybe a speaking mistake, like how to get over that and how to, work through that?
Yeah, I think, again, it kind of goes back to the same advice, but I think the idea of it is it's a much bigger deal to you than it is to anyone else. And for me, I would always use that kind of crutch of having an improv background and improv experience, and just especially in HI, just being able to, I could pop to anything. At some point, it becomes muscle memory. Whereas if I do a wrong pop or if I say the wrong line, you just keep going and don't stop. Obviously, without being said, stopping in the middle of the piece is probably the worst thing you can do, but definitely just pushing through and trying to pretend that it's part of it. Just make it a part of it. Maybe you have someone that can't speak and they're a character now. I don't know.
That makes sense. And then when you're going back to finding a piece, what do you look for when you're trying to find a piece that you're going to go off of? And I guess also, how do you memorize the pieces that you find? What's your strategy there?
For pieces, I think it's definitely one, what you care about, but also playing to your strengths. So I know that have a strong mother character. Like I just know that I can play, I don't know, middle-aged women. Like I could play them. I don't know. Like that's kind of like the characters that I used to I thrived with in speech and debate across all the events I did and stuff. I even did like a DI as like a mother, like like kind of crazy. But so I think knowing your strengths before you go in, making a little bit of a list, like kind of understanding what you're good at, and then finding a piece that is gonna hoist that stuff up. It's gonna put that on a pedestal and like let you kind of use the skills that you have. And then again, not to be repetitive, but it's about finding something that has a message that you believe in. And also one more thing on that is that it's 10 minutes. So if the thesis of a movie is not something that you agree with, there's so many like subplot lines and sub theses. So I think it's just being open-minded to like, hey, if you latch on to the supporting character, like you love their like kind of log line, well, you can make them one of the, not log line, yeah, you love their kind of through line, you can make them one of the main characters of 10 minutes. There's enough content to go around. So yeah, just keeping an open mind, finding something you believe in for sure.
That makes sense. And do you have any strategy for memorizing a piece? Like 10 minutes can be a lot for some people. Is there any strategies that you used?
Yeah, I think for me specifically, I memorize best with blocking. So I would normally block through, and that's how I would memorize. I wouldn't do very good at just memorizing as it was. And also characters help me memorize, like with my characters and stuff. So that was more for me. I think that kind of taps into the muscle memory of things, but that was definitely something that helped me. And, it's honestly just sitting down. It's just, you just have to carve out the time. It's the worst part of it all, but you got to do it.
That makes sense. And if you could go back and give your freshman year like a piece of advice, what piece of advice would you give yourself in terms of speech and debate?
I had a fairly unique freshman experience just because I never went to Novice or anything, and from my first tournament, like I won, and then I won state my freshman year in HI, at least specifically for that event. So it was like interesting. So like I think going back, I would just say to like enjoy it. It was such like a kind of once in a life opportunity to be able to have the opportunity to be so young and do so well. And I wish I just kind of, I did enjoy it for sure. Like I remember it was like the happiest time ever. But yeah, just like enjoy it. And I think it's like that it's a journey. This is such like an old man quote, but it's a journey, it's all about the journey, not the destination. So I think enjoying every year is so different in speech, and every piece you get is so different. So just enjoying that process. I miss the worst parts. I miss the memorizing. I miss the scavenging the bookstore for pieces. Like, you're going to miss all the parts that you might not love in the moment. So just enjoy.
That makes a lot of sense. I will also agree. I miss like the debate more than I think I should have, and I think I miss it more than I expected to. And I also think though that when you're in the moment, you can get caught up in the competition, which I think is great. But I also think that you should focus on like the people you're with and the tournaments and the locations you're at, because I think a lot of times you can get lost in like just trying to get up in the ranks, which is great, but also realize that there's so much more to speech and debate.
And they can tell. I mean, the second like you're only trying to get that score, it's so obvious. Like the amount of times I go in a room and I'm like, the person that's just doing so much, like they're basically like cooking the judge a 4-course meal. That stuff shows through. Like you don't need to do all that. If you really truly care about your piece, just stay true to yourself, kind of thing. So yeah, I totally agree with you.
That makes a lot of sense. And then also, before we wrapped up this interview, I wanted to give you a platform because you have a coaching service. So would you like to give a couple seconds to share that?
Yeah, no, super, super exciting. I just started, it's called Breakthrough Coaching. That's the name, but it's a coaching company that I'm slowly getting off the ground. I know COVID's kind of crazy, but yeah, so I'm private coaching. It's one-on-one, unless you're a duo, then it's 2-on-1, I guess. All the interp events, HIDI duo, all the interp events. And my mom is helping a little bit too. She also was a big part of my speech and debate career and stuff. And yeah, that's kind of it. So if you're interested, you can DM me on my Instagram, or you can just shoot me an email, and we'll just put it in the bottom if you can just put my email in the bottom. But
Awesome.
But yeah, below.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Okay. And then the final question is, you've obviously now graduated from high school and moved on from speech and debate as a competitor. Do you have a message for the speech and debate community and for everyone who's watching this right now?
Yeah, I think speech and debate it is such a great activity for so many reasons, which I'm sure anyone that's ever done it understands the amount that it can benefit someone. And I think it goes straight back to the old man quote that I used before, but like it really is about the journey and not the final destination. And I think like understanding that, my junior year, like I said, when I was so sick, like that just felt like at nationals, I was very, very ill, and that felt like the worst thing to ever happen. Like that was supposed to be my year. Like everything leading up to that had been, this is the year. And for that to happen, it felt like how could anything get any worse? Right. I didn't realize what would happen my senior year is where it would be the greatest payoff ever, because I worked so hard to get back to that point. So the journey, not a destination, and just, I don't know, it's such a good activity. Just like enjoy it. There's nothing else like it in the world. You can't get that experience of high school speech. I mean, yes, there's college speech and stuff, but it's nothing like what you get in interp or in debate in high school. High school just, it has this whole like feeling, and it's honestly shaped me more than anything. And now like living by myself and stuff, it's been amazing. I would recommend it to everyone.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. I would completely agree with that. Well, thank you so much for coming on and sharing some of your advice to the speech and debate community.
No, thank you. I appreciate it. It's fun to talk about the high school years. So thank you.